Now, Edge was built for the creative professional. So it actually has a look and feel of a creative professional tool, and it was built from the ground up to target HTML5. So what do I mean by that? So the animation that you're actually seeing here on the stage, this is actually a WebKit instance. So WebKit is the core engine that drives Safari, that drives Chrome, and drives just about every mobile browser that you'll see out there on a device today. So what you're looking at here is HTML5 content basically running in a browser inside of Edge. Now, this content that you're looking at, it's actually a cutscene from a game called Run Kitty Run, which is actually available on the iPad today. And the development company that built this chose to build it in HTML because they wanted to have freedom of choice of how they distribute this content. Now, in Edge, I've got a lot of control. I can actually scrub a timeline here. And by the way, this is something that took ad developers months to figure out how to build a timeline for HTML5. I can actually scrub the timeline here, and you can see I've got an animation where the lights change. I want this to pop a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub right to the end of that animation. I'm going to take something we call the mark, and I'm going to move it back. And what I have now is I have a point A and a point B. And so what I'm going to do is just change the scale here. So I'm going to make this come out a little bit more. We can kind of see that grow. And Edge creates the animation for me. So if I come back here and I actually scrub this, you'll see I've now got the lights changing, and I've got it scaling up as well. Now let's take a look at this in a browser. So we'll say preview in browser, run it, and I've now got my performant animation running. This is HTML5 code running in the browser. Now I also said that HTML is good for applications as well. So how do I take this web content and turn this into a native application? Well, there's a technology for that. As a matter of fact, it's a technology that's becoming the standard for companies like Salesforce, Facebook, IBM, to take web content and turn it into native applications. And that technology is called PhoneGap. And as I'm sure most of you are aware, we acquired PhoneGap last month. Now, even with PhoneGap, it still requires a developer to actually create all of this content for these different devices because they've got to download all the SDKs for each of the platforms they want to build. They've got to spend a couple of days creating all of the build systems, and then they have to maintain them. So the PhoneGap team thought, we've got to be able to solve that problem. We've got to make what used to take days and reduce it down to minutes. So they created a new service called PhoneGap Build, which will actually be part of the Creative Cloud when we release it. And we've taken all of that effort and moved it into the cloud. So now a developer or a designer literally just has to point to the HTML, choose the platforms they want to build, and PhoneGap does all the rest and actually hands them back an application that they can use. Now, I've actually taken the liberty of doing this already with PhoneGap, and I've actually created the Run Kitty Run scene that we saw from Edge as an application. I'm going to show this on my iPad really quickly. Can we just move to the iPad screen? Great. So I've got Run Kitty Run running right here. I'm going to click on this. It's a native application. Now you can see that Edge animation that I just built in Edge running inside the Run Kitty Run. I can actually switch in between different cutscenes. So this is now a native application that's been built and converted using PhoneGap. But I also said that the company that built this did this in HTML5 because they wanted choice. What if I don't want to put this in an app store? What if I want to be able to distribute this through the browser? Well, I can actually do that. It's HTML5. So I'm going to launch Safari on my iPad. I'm pointing to that same content that I built in Edge. Now I'm able to run those same animations that I built there in the browser, and it runs exactly the same way that it did in the native application. So we're really excited by this. We think that tools like Edge and PhoneGap Build are actually going to allow us to address a whole new class of customer that we don't address today, which is the web developer, as well as designers that are coming out of school that are choosing HTML as the technology they want to use. But of course, outside of that, we've also got millions of Flash designers and millions of Flash developers, and they would like to be able to actually access and target HTML5 as well. So what I'm going to show you now is a new version of Flash Professional, not available yet. And I've got Bilbo the Elephant animation here. I'm going to run that for you guys. So now this is actually a character animation, and this is something that's really, really hard to do in HTML5. And of course, Flash has been doing this for years. It's perfectly suited for this type of thing. But wouldn't it be great if I could build this in Flash and actually export this out as HTML5? And that's exactly what we've done in this latest version of Flash Professional. So you'll see I have a new publish setting now called HTML. I'm actually going to click on this and say Publish Preview, HTML. Now what Flash is doing is it's taking all that Flash content, it's actually converting that into HTML and CSS. It's taking all of the action script, actually converting that over into JavaScript. It's combining all of that stuff together, actually loading it up in the browser. In a couple of seconds, we will see Bilbo, our magic elephant, actually walking across the stage. So now you can choose to have an HTML5 elephant, or you can choose to have a Flash elephant. So this is some of the innovation that we've been doing around tools. But the reality is that to really create those incredible experiences, to really push the boundaries of where you can go, you need to actually be able to innovate in the runtime as well. Now, this is something we've had years of experience with in Flash. But in the web world, it's different because the runtime in the web world is the browser. So we've actually created a team at Adobe, the WebKit team, who actually spend their day jobs every day focusing on how to improve the browser, how to take some of that experience and technology that we've learned in Flash and take that to the browser. And we've been working with companies like Google, companies like Apple to actually do this. And we've already done some of this year already. We've actually taken some of our publishing and layout expertise and we've applied that. It's now available in the latest version of Chrome. You'll be able to get it in Internet Explorer 10. But what I want to show you today is something new that we've been working on. This is called CSS Shaders. We've already submitted this to the W3C, and CSS Shaders is really about building cinematic effects very, very easily, just using a couple of lines of CSS. This used to take, specialists in WebGL to have to write a whole bunch of code to do this type of thing on the web. And I've actually got a CSS shader applied to some basic web content here. So I have some web content with an SVG animation. And you'll see as I move the cursor over here, I get this really nice rippling effect and the colors change. Just a couple of lines of CSS. Let's take a look at a more advanced demo here. I have a flipbook demo. And this is actually a series of flipping through a series of web pages. And you'll notice as I flip through these web pages with just a little bit of CSS, I get this beautiful effect of the pages kind of moving up and down here. Now, what's great about CSS Shaders is that it actually works on top of your HTML content. So we're not asking you to change anything that you do. I have here an HTML5 video. You'll see that video running. I'm going to flip that page, and you'll see that the CSS shader works in context on top of that HTML. So we think this is going to be great. And what we're really excited about is that as we can continue to push the runtimes forward, allow people to create more things in HTML5, we bring that back into the tools so that we allow the designers and the developers to be able to take that and move forward as well. Now, David said before that HTML5, it's not just for websites and applications. We've been taking a look at all of our Creative Suite tools and trying to figure out where we can leverage HTML5 to produce better capabilities for our designers. And I want to show you one example of that I'm really excited about. So this here is InDesign, and as everybody probably knows, InDesign is the premier tool for building publishing content, both for print and now for digital as well. But when we speak to print designers, they say it's great that I can now build content for an iPad or for an Android device, but when I want to build that content to run on multiple tablets, I've got to rebuild it every single time, because when you take some content that I've built, and this is actually a whole magazine I've got set up here, if I take that content and I make it smaller for, say, a Kindle Fire, look what happens, the content changes. Let me just click on that again. So I reduce that in size. I don't want that. I mean, it doesn't look right at all. That's not what I want. So we took some of our principal scientists over a year ago, and we had them really focus on this problem, the problem of adaptive content. How do I build it once and make it run everywhere? And they came up with something called liquid layout rules. Now, again, this is not available in InDesign today. It will be available in the next release of InDesign. And I'm going to turn on my liquid rules. And one of the things I get is I now get something we call springs. And I get these smart guides that allows me as a designer to define how I want the content to reshape itself based on the type of device that I'm on. So now with this same content I've got on the page, if I want to see what this might look like on a Kindle Fire, guess what? The page smartly resizes itself and repaginates the content for that. Let's see if I want to see what this looks like on an iPad. I can see what it looks like on an iPad. Now, what the designer may not know is that we're actually leveraging HTML5 behind the scenes to make this happen. And just to show you that, I'm actually going to preview this in a browser. There's my content, and you can see that if I resize that browser, maybe this is on a tablet, you actually see all of that content is smartly resizing itself based on the intent of the designer. And this isn't just on the page, but it's throughout the whole magazine. So if I actually swipe to the next page, all of the content is laid out there correctly as well. And I can tell you that when we show print designers this, their eyes literally pop out of their head at the idea that they can build this once and have it work across all of these devices. It really is the holy grail for digital publishing. So lastly, I just want to talk about Flash for a few seconds. Flash has always played a role of really being out on the boundaries in terms of what you can push forward. And while we've been doing a lot of great things in the browser, it does take time for that to actually make its way across all of the browsers. So we still see Flash as a great way to continue pushing the technology forward, the role that it's been playing for a long time. Now, we've been talking about Flash recently being specifically around premium video and gaming. And for me, gaming is really a placeholder for just incredibly rich and expressive content. And I want to show you an example of a rich ad and a game converging to sort of generate a really compelling experience for a car configurator. So what I'm going to do is come up here and grab Safari. So here I have a car configurator. Now this is built in HTML, and I'm sure you guys have probably used car configurators before. I can come in here, choose to build it. I can pick my different colors and change the color of the car, change the inside of the car. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually show you something that we've been working on in Flash. It's the same kind of car configurator, but Nissan really wanted to create an experience that was much more virtual when you're working with the car. So you can see it drives on here. As I pick the colors, I'm going to pick blue. You can see I get a nice kind of movement here as I pick the color. Let's take a look at what it looks like to actually be in the car. So I'm going to open the door. Let's get inside. You can see I get a nice kind of motion, sort of like I'm sitting down inside of the car. It's a really virtual experience. Let's move around. I can move around. I can take a look at the back of the car. See, make sure there's enough room for the kids. Come back over here. And when I've finished customizing my car, I can take it for a test drive. OK, here we go. So I can actually drive around here. You can see all this beautiful motion taking place. You can see the city in the background. This is really just the kind of thing that you can do in Flash today. And so we think this is a really great experience. I can actually change the angle of the car as I'm looking at it over here. Flip the lights on, flip the lights off. All those kind of good things there. So we're really excited about this type of experience that you can really only build in Flash today. And we're very excited, just like in CSS Shaders, of being able to take this technology and this expertise that we continue to push the boundaries on and bring that back into the browsers and ultimately back into the tools so that designers and developers can create this great kind of content. So with that, I will thank you for your time and happy to bring David back up on stage. Thank you.